So hello and thanks for joining this webinar about the documentation and documentation toolkit. And yeah, we'll just wait a minute for everyone to join. While we are waiting, it would be great if you could let me know where you're joining from. So I'm joining in from Zagreb, from Croatia, and if you can send me a message through chat, or if you joined through Zoom, you can actually send it through this Q&A pane. So just the city and the country where you're joining from, so that I have a feeling on where the people are joining or where the people are watching this webinar. Anyway, while I'm waiting for your inputs, just to let you know that just a couple of notes. First of all, we are recording this webinar, and you'll be able to watch the webinar from the same page where you registered actually for the webinar. So if you registered on Advisera webpage, then on the same page you will see also the recorded webinar. If you are watching this webinar on YouTube or on LinkedIn, then you'll be able to see the recording of the same webinar on the same page where you're watching the live webinar now. And second thing, you'll be able to download the presentation deck, and at the end of the webinar, I'll actually let you know where you can find the link to download the presentation deck. Great, I think we can start now. So, okay, someone from Switzerland. Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. Great. Yeah, welcome to this webinar, how to use the documentation toolkit for NIS2, DORA, and ISO 27001 compliance. My name is Dejan Kosutic, and I'm the main ISO 27001 NIS2 and DORA expert at Advisera. And Advisera is a company that makes compliance easy to understand and simple to use. And this webinar today will last somewhere between 45 and 60 minutes, and this really depends on the amount of questions that you'll have. And by the way, by all means, please do ask questions, and you can actually ask questions as I go through the presentation, and I'll try to respond as soon as I can. I mean, basically, you don't have to wait with these questions. At the end of the webinar, when we have this Q&A session, you can ask them during my presentation. Okay, great. So why is this topic important? Well, it's important because documentation is typically one of the biggest challenges for cybersecurity professionals. They don't usually know which documents to write, how detailed these documents need to be, what is acceptable by the auditors or by the supervision body, these kind of things. And yeah, so what I'll explain in the webinars today, in today's webinar, is basically how to speed up writing of these documents using this Advisera's toolkits, and I'll focus on these three frameworks. So NIS2, Cybersecurity Directive in Europe, DORA is Cybersecurity Regulation in Europe, and ISO 27001 is international standard. And yeah, this webinar today is basically intended for any professionals that are in charge of these kind of cybersecurity compliance projects. This could be consultants, this could be security managers, project managers, IT managers, so anyone who is dealing with these frameworks. All right, so one of my main points today is that actually these toolkits, documentation, should not only be about the documents themselves. Because as you probably know from experience, writing a document is not going to help you unless actually you also understand, how you need to change what is happening in the company, how you actually need to make your processes more secure, how you need to make your activities in the company more secure, how you need to make, let's say, people more aware on what needs to be done and why it needs to be done. So documents themselves are usually not enough for better security, but of course they do help better security. And I would say accordingly, these documentation toolkits should also not be only about documents. They should also be about more than that. Basically, it should be also about expert support, about the know-how that you get for compliance, and also by actually speeding up the whole process. Of course, I'll cover all these topics as I go through the webinar, and yeah, I'll go now through the agenda. And by the way, if you want me to focus on any of these topics, let me know through a chat window, and then I'll try to spend more time at the webinar at the topic that you're interested in. So first I'll explain between these frameworks who actually needs to comply with what, because very often there is a confusion, you know, if a company needs to comply with NIS2 or DORA or whatever. So I'll explain that. And then I'll show you what are the key requirements for these three frameworks, and where can you actually find the detailed requirements. And then I'll briefly explain what are the three approaches on how a company can actually go for this kind of compliance projects. Then I'll show you these Advisera's toolkits, so basically sets of documents that are needed for the implementation. I'll show you also the pricing, what options exist, and I'll briefly go through the main challenges in the implementation. If we have enough time, then I'll go through this challenges slide. Okay, so yeah, let's start then with this table, and basically this one explains who needs to comply with what. So here in this column you actually see NIS2. So I'll start with this NIS2. This is a European directive for critical infrastructure companies in the European Union. Anyway, basically it says the following. If you're a financial entity, you do not need to comply with NIS2. Also, if you're a supplier to a financial entity, NIS2 is not relevant. If you are a critical infrastructure company in European Union, then yes, you have to comply with both the NIS2 directive and the NIS2 local NIS2 laws in your country, because each European country is publishing their own laws and regulations based on NIS2. And basically this is something that where your critical infrastructure company needs to comply with those laws and regulations. If you're a critical digital infrastructure company, you also have to comply with NIS2 directive and local laws and regulations. If you're a supplier, no, you don't have to comply with NIS2. If you are any other, let's say, company, you don't have to comply with NIS2. Then related to NIS2, there is this also CIR 2024-2690. This CIR stands for Commission Implementing Regulation. And this CIR is valid only for critical infrastructure companies that are classified as digital companies. So, without going into details, NIS2 specified that there are 18 sectors, and out of these 18, only 3 sectors are digital companies. So, if your company belongs to any of these 3 sectors, then your company also has to comply with this CIR 2024-2690. Now, we'll share a link with you where actually you can see the breakdown of these 18 sectors and a bit more details about NIS2. And yeah, so my colleague will send you now this link to an article which is called "Which Companies Must Comply with NIS2: Essential versus Important Entities." And you'll see this in a minute, in a second in the chat window. Okay, now let's move on to DORA. DORA is a financial regulation which is applicable again for European Union, but for financial entities, meaning financial organizations like banks, insurance companies, brokerage houses, investment banks, and so on. So basically, only if you're a financial entity, then you have to comply with DORA. There are also these RTSs. These RTSs, I'll actually explain this in the next slide, but RTSs stands for some additional regulations related to DORA. Okay, so this is about financial entities. Now, who actually needs to comply with security clauses in agreements? Okay, this is this column here. So if you are a supplier to a financial entity, and you have an agreement with them and you have some security clauses in those agreements, then yes, then you have to comply with these agreements. So just to clarify this, if you're an IT company that supplies their services or products or services to a bank, then you do not need to comply with DORA. You actually have to comply with the security clauses in those agreements. If you are a supplier to critical infrastructure company, you have to comply again with security clauses in agreements, but you do not have to comply with NIS2. Okay, so this is very important to understand. Also, if you are some other company which is not, which is basically dealing in some other way with a critical infrastructure company or with the financial entity, if you have some security clauses in agreements, basically you have to comply with these security clauses in agreements. Okay, so we'll share two more links now with you. One is this who must comply with the DORA regulation. Again, there you will see exactly. Also, this other article is called which IT companies need to comply with DORA and how. Basically, you will see that IT companies do not have to comply directly with DORA, but they have to comply with these security clauses, as I was explaining here. And now let's see which companies must comply with security standards or ISO 27001. Basically, suppliers to financial entities. Again, if you're an IT company or a different type of supplier, then you have to comply with a particular a security standard. DORA doesn't say which security standard, it only says security standards. Now, since ISO 27001 is a leading security standards, security governance standards worldwide, typically most companies, most suppliers for financial entities will actually go for 27001. Of course, you might go for, I don't know, NIS, the cybersecurity framework, you might go for something else, but typically this will be 27001. Same thing here. If you're a supplier to a company that is in NIS2 scope, again, you as a supplier do not have to comply with NIS2, but you do have to comply with a security standard. Again, it doesn't say, NIS2 doesn't say which security standard. And again, as with DORA, most companies, most suppliers will go for ISO 27001. Okay, so I hope this gives a better, let's say, idea of really who needs to comply with what and who does not need to comply with what, because very often people are thinking that, you know, if you're a supplier to a company that is in NIS2 scope, that you also have to comply with NIS2. No, this is not true. Again, suppliers of companies that are in NIS2 scope, these suppliers do not have to comply with NIS2. Good. Now let's go for the next slide and just explain roughly what are these requirements in ISO 27001 standard. So basically you have these clauses 4 to 10, which are mandatory, and I'll show you these clauses in a second. And then you have these 93 controls from Annex A. This is basically a catalog of controls, and then you can select which of these controls are applicable for your company based on your risks. Now let me share a screen and show you basically how this looks like. So you'll actually find on Advisera website this big guide to ISO 27001 clauses, and you can actually see the link now in the chat window, and when you open it you will see an explanation of each and every clause. These are these non-mandatory clauses, so 0 to 3, but this is not so important. But what is important here are these clauses 4 and further, okay? And when you actually click any of these, so let's say that you want to learn about clause 4.3 about determining the scope, and then you will actually, when you open it, you will see an explanation. So here is the explanation of the clause. Here is the documents that you basically have to write. Here are, let's say, suggested steps for the implementation. And here is a typical audit evidence. So basically what the auditor will expect to see when you're going for a certification audit. Okay, going back here. So when you scroll down, you will see all the clauses here, and you will also see all the controls from the Annex A. As you can see, the controls from Annex A are categorized in 4 sections. So 8.5 are organizational controls. So you can see, I don't know, here like access control or access rights, these kind of things. People controls like, you know, screening or remote working and so on. Physical controls, as you can see, quite many of them, but also technological controls. So you can also see lots of these technological controls here. Anyway, for each of these, you know, when you open it, again, you will see a description of the requirements, which kind of documents you need, what kind of implementation is suggested, and what kind of evidence is required. Okay, so basically this is roughly the the requirements for 27001. We'll also share now with you a link to a YouTube video, and if you like this, if you like to learn through videos, then you can actually open this YouTube video, because it will explain, this is where I explain, all of these clauses again, so you can take a look at this video. Another link that we'll share now with you is this article, which explains the implementation steps for ISO 27001, but it will also explain, what are the roles in the implementation, how much time does it take, which kind of resources do you need, and so on. And finally, you'll see a link to an article which lists all the mandatory documents for 27001. So you will also see this in the links now. Great. Now let's move on to NIS2 requirements. So as you can see, the most important requirements are in NIS2 are in these articles 20, 21, and 23. So let me switch the screen and show you. Okay, so this is the full text of NIS2 directive, and you have the link now in the chat window if you want to open it. So let me actually go for this article 20. So this is about governance. So basically, what is the role of the management bodies? About the training, knowledge, skills, these kind of things. Article 21 is goes a little bit more into these cybersecurity measures, but it's very high level. It's says that you need to have top level policy, incident handling, business continuity, backup, and so on. But it doesn't say anything more into detail, right? It says only backup or disaster recovery, but it doesn't say anything more than that. And as you can see, there are several things listed here. If I go further, 22 is not very interesting, but 23 speaks a little bit more about incident reporting. So here you have requirements. For example, you have to, within 72 hours, you have to actually send incident notification. So this is basically what this article 23 is about. Anyway, the problem here is that, as you can see, this is not very detailed. And then, as the next document that I already mentioned a couple of slides ago is this Commission Implementing Regulation 2690. It's valid, again, only for digital critical infrastructure companies. It's much more detailed, so let me show you now how this looks like. Okay, so this is the full text of CIR. You'll see also the link in the chat window now. And here, if you scroll down to this annex, so you'll see it has 16 articles, which are not very interesting, but what is the most interesting is this annex. When you open it, then you will see a very detailed list of requirements for cybersecurity. The first one is for this policy, top-level policy, what exactly needs to be included. Then regarding roles and responsibilities authorities, then about risk management framework or risk management methodology, then compliance monitoring, independent review, basically this is internal audit, then how to handle incidents, so what you need to have as part of incident handling policy, monitoring and logging, event reporting, event assessment classification, incident response, and so on and so forth. And it goes pretty much, as you can see, I didn't reach even the 1/3 of the document of this annex. So as you can see, this one is pretty detailed, and this is something that you have to comply with. And then as a third level, companies that are in NIS2 scope, they also have to be compliant with these local laws and regulations in particular EU countries. Unfortunately, they are different from one country to another. And I'll show you here on Advisera website, there is a page called NIS2 Where to Start. You'll see the link also in the chat window now. And here you can actually scroll down, and you will see here this section called Transposition to Local Laws. And here we publish articles for particular countries. So as you can see, Italy, Croatia, Belgium, Latvia, Lithuania. So you'll see articles there that go into more details on what these local laws and regulations require. And we also have this I also publish lots of videos on YouTube where I explain what are these local laws and regulations. And we've shared now with you this playlist where you can actually see several videos on local laws and regulations in Europe. And I'm actually adding them all the time, adding new videos. So, for example, I think in 2 days I'll publish a new video about Latvia. Next week I'll publish a video. Let me see. I'm not sure actually what is the next one, but anyway, about Denmark. So next week I'll publish the video about Denmark. So I'm publishing all the time these new videos where I explain these local laws and regulations. Okay, good. This is NIS2. Now let's go to DORA. DORA is the most detailed of all of these laws and regulations. So again, let me switch the screen. Here you will see the full text of DORA. Again, you will see in the chat window the link to this full text. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because there is too much, but there are 4 main chapters. So the chapter 2, ICT risk management. Chapter 3, ICT-related incident management, classification and reporting. Chapter 4, digital operational resilience testing. And Chapter 5, managing of ICT third-party risk. So I'll just open one of these. Let's say for ICT risk management, let's say that I want to open, I don't know, backup policies and procedures. You will see here more detailed requirements when it comes to backup. As you can see, quite a lot of these things. Okay. On top of this, there are also these regulatory technical standards, and they actually are kind of annexes to DORA, and they go into more details about these security measures. And we also share now with you a link to this the article about these Commission delegated regulations, which explain actually all of these appendices to DORA. Okay, let me see if there is anything else. So we'll also share now with you a link to this list of documents that you need according to DORA. So if you need to comply with DORA, you'll see also this article which explains all the mandatory documents. Okay, now basically this is around what are the requirements. Now, if you need to comply with any of these 3 frameworks, the question is what approach you need to take, how to do it. There are basically 3 approaches. The first one is that you do it on your own. And this basically means, or this is usually possible if you already have someone in the company who has already done it, who already has experience. So for example, let's say that you are I don't know, mid-size or a larger bank, that you already have a very experienced security officer, I mean CISO, security team. Basically, in these kind of situations, you are probably not going to need any external help. You can actually do this with your own employees because you already have the knowledge, you already have the know-how to run this kind of a project. The second approach is basically that you use consultants, and this is typically done if you have absolutely no experience with security, and on top of this, you don't really have time to deal with this. So for example, let's say that you are, I don't know, a company of 10 or 20 employees, that you are, working already overtime, and none of your employees have really time to, I don't know, deal with ISO 27001, for example. In this case, it's probably the best that you hire a consultant, especially if your deadline for compliance, for let's say certification, is rather short. In this case, a consultant would be the best approach. And then a third approach is somewhere in between the first 2. So this is basically, the third approach is a combination of your employees and external help. This is where you actually use your own employees, but these employees are then getting the know-how from someone externally. So this external company is providing the know-how, documentation, tools, whatever is needed, and then your employees are using their own time to actually implement the standard and comply with any of these frameworks. Now, we in Advisera use this third approach, and this is basically what we built our business around. But if you ask me which approach is the best, I mean, this really depends on your specific circumstances. Again, if you already have the know-how in your company, then you should go with the first approach. If you don't have any time, and if your budget is pretty good, pretty big, then you should go with the second approach. And if you still don't have too big budget, and if you still want to kind of learn and make sure that your employees are getting all this know-how, then you can go for this third approach. Good. Now let's move on then to what basically Advisera can help you with this documentation toolkit. So what I'll show you in a minute how this looks like, but I'll just explain you what are the most important features. These documentation toolkits, of course, provide you with documents, but they also define you the sequence on how you need to write these documents, how you need to run your project. They actually help you write all of this, speed up the writing of these documents, and of course you can actually create all of these editable documents that you can download on your disk. Now let me share the screen and show you how this looks like. So once you actually gain the access to one of these toolkits, then you basically access this kind of, let's say, simple application. In this case, this is about ISO 27001 documentation toolkit in English. And here what you will see is this series of folders. And basically these folders are the steps in your project. Okay, so first you start with this document management procedure for document and record control. Then you actually start with the project plan, then you start with identification of requirements, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, in each of these folders, you have several documents. For example, this one is the biggest, so Annex A security controls. So you have IT security policy, and then you actually have an indication whether this is a mandatory document or not. And then the references, so which clauses or controls does this document cover. So as you can see, IT security policy is a mandatory one, covers several of these controls, but clear desk and clear scheme policy is not a mandatory, and it covers only two controls here. Okay, and this is basically how it looks like, lots of documents here. And then, I don't know, internal audit, you will see internal audit procedure, internal audit program, a report, internal audit checklist. Funnily enough, this one is not mandatory, but it does cover clause 9.2. Okay, now, how does it look like when you start writing any of these documents? So let's say that you want to write, I don't know, risk assessment and treatment methodology. You click on it, and then you actually you enter a wizard. And this wizard starts actually asking you a couple of questions. What is the name of the person to approve this document? Let's say this is, I don't know, John Doe. Okay, what is the confidentiality level of this document? Let's say, I don't know, confidential. Then you go next. Who is in charge of coordinating risk assessment and treatment? It already suggests here risk officer. Why? Because I already filled out a couple of documents before, and then it remembered actually what I entered, and this is why it suggests actually the answer next time. But other than this, you already have various suggestions here or what you could enter, right? Who is the job title in charge of managing security in your company? Let's say this is not CISO. Let's say, I don't know, Chief Security Officer. Okay, you go next. I don't know, sponsor of the project. Okay, job title to approve this document. And then once you're done, you simply click download. And in a second or two, you will actually be able to open this document. So when I click on it, actually this is the downloaded document. This is now locally on your disk. And what you see is actually that you downloaded this Word document. It already filled out the logo. By the way, I uploaded this logo previously. I also uploaded previously this company name. And as you can see, it already inserted all the things that I entered through the wizard. So for example, approver, this is the John Doe, the name that I entered. Confidentiality level, this is the one that I entered. As you can see here, again, the company name is inserted, the level of confidentiality, and you have the full text of this document now. You have all the references here, and here is basically where the main part of the document starts. And as you can see, for example, the process for risk assessment. Risk assessment is implemented through this risk assessment table. Risk assessment process is coordinated by risk officer. Again, this is the job title that I entered through the wizard, so this is why it's here. And you also have this comment here, right? Once you don't need this comment, you simply delete it, and you can actually go further without it. And I mean, these comments, help you actually fill out or adapt the documents for your specific circumstances. So, for example, here, risk assessment table, you can find the template for this document in the toolkit folder, so and so. Of course, all of this document is fully editable. So you can say that a risk assessment is implemented not through this table, but through risk register. Okay. Let's say that you're using some kind of a tool for this. You simply change this, and this is how you adapt it. And as you can see, basically this is it. The text is here. Using this wizard, you actually speed up and fill this information out. Even if you do not fill everything out, you can still do it once you download the documents on your local disk, and basically you can then complete it and personalize this document fully for your for your specific needs. Okay, going back to the toolkit. Yeah, so when I go back, I can of course go for any other document and edit it and so on. Okay, so this document, this toolkit actually exists in several languages. So when I actually look for it here, this is the French version. Okay, so if I go again for this risk assessment methodology, again, there will be the same questions, basically for the same documents. Actually, let me show you. So I'm not going to fill this out. I'm just going to skip all of these questions. And I'm going to download the document just to show you how this French version of the document looks like. As you can see, nothing is filled out because I skipped the questions there. But again, the document is basically the same, only in Good. Now I'm going to show you now a NIS2 toolkit. So this is basically how NIS2 toolkit looks like. It's similar in structure like 27001, but it's much more detailed because the requirements, especially for this CIR, are more detailed. So there are roughly 70 or maybe 80 documents in this NIS2 documentation toolkit, whereas 27001 toolkit has, I think, around 50 or so. But yeah, I mean, the thing here is very similar. So if I go again for this methodology document, here you actually see different, of course, references. And when I actually download this document, let me actually go for all the next steps. You will actually see that it's much more detailed. So it's not the same as the methodology for 27001. For example, let me show you this. Yeah, for example, it's like impact and likelihood here has the scale of 1 to 5, whereas in 27001 methodologies, high, medium, and low. So it's only 3 levels. Okay, going back to this here, there is also a localized version of NIS2 documents, NIS2 toolkits for particular local markets. So let me see this one. So for example, here we have this documentation toolkit that is localized for Italy's local laws, right? Because Italy, of course, published their own laws and regulations for NIS2. And we, of course, translated this very document into the local, into Italian. And yeah, when you open any of these documents, you can actually see which of these local laws and regulations are covered. So as you can see, lots of things are covered here with this IT security policy. So there are many of these Italian specific laws and regulations. We also refer to ISO 27001. Yeah, and basically there is this toolkit for many of these local countries. So let's say this one is for Belgium, but this one is in Dutch, right? Of course, there is also one for Belgium. Sorry, this is 27001. Let me find the one for NIS2 for Belgium in French. Okay, so basically you have an idea. And yeah, when I go for DORA, again, the same thing. There is only DORA toolkit exists only in English. It's not translated, but again, you have all the documents here. For example, this one is interesting: digital operational resilience testing. It's something specific for DORA. It does not exist in NIS2 or 27001. Okay, yeah, basically this is what I wanted to show you regarding these toolkits. Of course, if you want me to show you something else, let me know. And yeah, we'll share now with you these links to where you can actually find more details. You already have the links for ISO 27001 Documentation Toolkit, for NIS2 Toolkit, and we'll also share now with you the link for DORA Toolkit. If you open any of these pages, you will see a much more detailed explanation of each toolkit, but you will also see a preview of each and every document. So if you scroll down in these pages, you will see preview for each document. You will actually be able to see roughly half of the document, how it looks like. What is also interesting is that you can actually open a free demo account for this toolkit. And then you'll be able to, download, play around with this wizard and download a free demo version of these templates to your local disk. Okay, now regarding pricing, 27001 toolkit is $900, NIS2 toolkit is 2,000 euros, and DORA toolkit is 2,500 euros. So basically, it's they're priced according to their complexity and the number of documents. What is included in the prices? Free updates within 24 not hours, but months. This is very important, especially for NIS2, because this legislation for NIS2 is very dynamic. You have something coming up very often. And of course, we need to update all of these documents according to these new laws and regulations that are published. And basically all of these updates are published automatically in this application that I was showing you, so all our users actually have the newest versions once we publish them. Also, what is included is one-on-one consultation with an expert. So if you get stuck with your implementation, you can actually schedule a call and we'll help you out. We'll also review a couple of your documents depending on the version of the toolkit you purchase, and we will support you with your questions through email, and typically we respond within 1 or 2 business days. And yeah, this document wizard through this application, you can actually use it for at least these 2 years, as long as you have the actually updates for the toolkit. So all of this is included in the price. Okay, good. Yeah, let me then go with the next slide. And this is basically about the biggest challenges, and I've summarized these biggest challenges based on the emails that I received from you, and thank you for sending these challenges via email. So one challenge was about risk management, because it is so difficult to quantify. And yes, it's very, as you probably know, according to 27001, you have to basically assign a value to the level of impact and assign a value for the level of likelihood. Okay, so impact and likelihood are mandatory in 27001. And the way to kind of make it more easy is that you have a good risk management methodology where you explain very, I would say, clearly what actually, let's say that you have a scale of low, medium, and high for assessing likelihood and for assessing impact. If you describe in each of these in your methodology what actually a low impact means, or medium impact, or high impact, then it will be much easier for people that need to do this job to do this. This is one part of the answer. The second part is that you should make some kind of a training for your employees, where you actually explain to them, how actually to perform this risk management, what needs to be done, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult, for them to do this only, based on a document, no matter how document is good. So a combination of a good, I would say, description and a training, I think, is how we resolve this problem. Okay, another challenge: define a list of ISMS documents that will map the minimum requirements. Yeah, so one thing is you should always map your documents to a specific requirements in ISO 27001 and I mean DORA or NIS2. And as you've noticed in our toolkit, we always have a concrete reference in this application, but also once you download the document, you always have a reference exactly on what clause or what article is covered by particular document. This is one part of the story. Second part of the story is that the smaller your company is, you should actually basically go for the minimum. And if you remember, this is why we always mark, let me actually go back to this screen and show you, for example, the 27001 toolkit. This is why we always mark which documents are mandatory and which are not. So for example, this procedure for document record control, this one is not mandatory. So if you're a smaller company, you might not need to write it, but if you're a larger company, you probably would. For example, let me go again for this security controls here. IT security policy is not mandatory, but clear desk and clear screen policy is not. So if you're a smaller company, you do not have to write, these non-mandatory documents, because this will probably be an overkill for a smaller company. If you're a larger company, then you will probably write something like this. So the answer to this question on how to actually have a minimum amount of documents, especially for a smaller company, is basically that you have some kind of a list which tells you which documents are mandatory and which are not. Okay, another challenge was how to align NIS2 DORA and 27001 in one governance or cybersecurity governance. And first, just mention here that it's not going to be very often that a company needs to comply with all of the three, especially not with DORA and NIS2, because DORA applies only to financial organizations and NIS2 applies only to critical infrastructure companies, and it will be extremely rare, that one company needs to comply with both DORA and NIS2. So usually these two are excluded. Now, of course, a particular company might already comply with 27001, and then it also wants to comply with, let's say, NIS2. This could be a case. And in this case, I would say that 27001 could be a good baseline, but it's not going to be enough for NIS2 compliance, because NIS2, especially this Commission Implementing Regulation 2690, is much more detailed, which means that you need to use 27001 as a baseline and then build on top of this the requirements for NIS2. So this would roughly be the approach. What is good about 27001 here is that it's the most logically written, the most logically organized standard out of these three. Because in 27001 you have this plan, do, and check, enact cycle, PDCA cycle, and it's actually logical to implement and organize your cybersecurity governance according to 27001. On the other hand, NIS2 and DORA, simply list a bunch of requirements without any, I would say, logical structure to it. I mean, they are, let's say, structured in these sections and all, but there is no, I would say, kind of connecting tissue between them. Whereas again, 27001 is written with this management part in mind. So I would always use 27001 as a baseline and then build on top of it these other ones. Choosing which controls to implement from 27001 NXA, well, basically this needs to depend primarily on your risks. Okay, so if you have a high risk related to your, I don't know, devices that you're using remotely, then obviously you will apply the control which is related to remote work. The second input are the requirements. So for example, let's say that your client is requiring you to use a specific type of VPN, right, a virtual private network, and in this case you will then you must implement this requirement because this is required by one of your clients, and in this case you will apply the controls related to encryption, but also related to network control or these kind of things. And the third input is basically, pure logic. Let's say that that the risk assessment, and the requirements from your clients didn't show any requirements for backup. No matter, even if you did not have these inputs, you will still most probably apply the backup as a control, because it's one of the very basic things that it's very logical to do. So I would say these three key inputs you will take into account when selecting controls. Okay, another question or challenge here: how far into supply chain can audits be mandatory? So okay, for 27001, it's it doesn't say anything about being audits being mandatory for supply chain. NIS2 also not so specific. DORA actually might, or some implementing regulations related to DORA might actually go into more detail, but to be honest, I didn't see anything yet. What I did see in NIS2 and DORA is that it basically says that these companies in DORA scope and NIS2 scope, they have to control their supply chain, whatever that means, right? So if you have a direct supplier and this supplier does not have any sub-suppliers, then fine, then you only control this first supplier. But if your main supplier has two additional levels of sub-suppliers, then you will basically have to make sure that all of these three levels of suppliers are covered with your control. It doesn't mean that you have to do audits for all of them, but you actually have to determine if you do audits on your suppliers depending on the risks, okay? So for example, let's say that you are a bank and that you outsource the development of your core banking software to a supplier, then of course you will do the audits of this supplier, because if anything happens to this supplier, your main core banking software might get stuck, which is a very bad situation. So in this case, because of the high risk, obviously this bank will have to perform audit of this supplier. On the other hand, if this supplier supplies some, I would say, low risk services, then the audit will not be needed. So this is basically indirect answer to this question. Okay, let me go then to conclusion, and then I'll go for the Q&A session. So to conclude, these toolkits are, I would say, made to substantially reduce the implementation time and to avoid potential problem with authorities or certification bodies. And basically it's as I mentioned before, you can subscribe, you can actually sign up for a free trial of these toolkits, free demo, and again, you can also access any of these document wizards and a free demo of all of these documents. And you can actually click this link to see all the toolkits from Advisera. Of course, we cover these three frameworks, but we also cover lots of other frameworks, I think a total of 15. So you will see in this link, you will see all of our all of the toolkits that we have. And if you want someone from Advisera to actually show you how these toolkits work, then you can schedule a call with our toolkit expert. And then he will show you, everything that you need to know, that you need to see with these toolkits. Good. Let's go now for the Q&A session. So feel free to send me any question now, and I'll answer you. Basically anything that you want to know. And before I start answering your questions, just a couple of notes. First of all, feel free to reach out directly to me via email, and you'll see my email address now in the chat, on the screen and in the chat window. Second thing is you can follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube. So we already shared a couple of YouTube videos, but you will see now in the chat window this YouTube channel of mine, and there you'll find lots of videos around NIS2 and DORA and 27001. Lately I also started publishing videos around ISO 42001. This is AI governance standard. So if you want to learn in this video format, then you can visit my YouTube profile. On LinkedIn, I post regularly news from this cybersecurity and AI governance world. So if you want to keep up to date, then you can follow me on LinkedIn. And on YouTube, you'll also notice this Secure and Simple podcast. So this podcast is actually intended for consultants and for security managers. So there I actually interview successful consultants, security CISOs and other security managers, and you can learn from them on basically the I would say state-of-the-art practices for cybersecurity. And you'll also find one interesting episode there. It's about how to write documents. And this is an episode with Carlos Cruz. I actually had this episode, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. Okay, and a third thing, my next webinar will be next Wednesday, the same time as today, and it will be about how to start a consultancy. So if you're a consultant, if you want to start, let's say, your career as a consultant, then I'll explain, what steps you need to take, and basically, where to find the know-how, how to certify, how to find first clients. I'll explain all of these things in this next webinar. Okay, let me now go through your questions. So I received one question before the webinar, so I'll read this first. So question was from Malik. What is the most efficient method after implementation to automate the organizational processes of the document required? For example, notification updates on the docs needed to be reviewed, set time before audit, alerting documents owners about updates, maintaining an active tracker, and so on. So basically, for that purpose, you should use some kind of a document management system. So, for example, SharePoint, could be, Microsoft SharePoint could be one solution. And by the way, we also have in Advisera, we have, I would say, a small GRC tool. It's called 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀𝗁. And I'll ask my colleague also to share this link for 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀. I didn't speak about 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀 today because I wanted to stick only to the topic of documentation toolkits. But basically, 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀 is everything that you see in a documentation toolkit plus the automation. And this automation is primarily for risk register, statement of applicability, and also for this document management. So if you're interested in automating, all these notifications around documents and so on, then you can actually use 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀. And by the way, 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀 is only for 27001. We do not have 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀 for NIS2 or for DORA. Okay, also I received a question from Silas. How is NIS2 compliance typically managed in an international company when working with global ISMS, for example, ISO 27000, multiple subsidiaries and the local NIS2 requirements? Yeah, this is unfortunately a big pain because as you realize, each and every country has different laws and regulations. I mean, they're not so hugely different, but yes, they are different. I mean, if you take a look at, requirements in Italy versus requirements in Latvia, yes, they are different. They're not the same. So, in my view, the best actually thing to do is to use this Commission Implementing Regulation 2690 as the baseline, okay? Of course, you must use CIR 2690 if you are a digital infrastructure company, but my recommendation is actually that you use it even if you are not a digital infrastructure company. Let's say that you are a critical infrastructure company in energy sector. In this case, you do not need to comply with CIR. But if your company operates in several European countries, I would actually advise you to use CIR because when you take a look at the requirements in each EU country, in most cases they actually align fully with what CIR is asking. Okay, so again, even though this CIR is mandatory only for digital infrastructure companies, they can this same document can actually be very good for other sectors if your company needs to operate in several countries, because again, these countries are more or less following this CIR, and you can actually see this when you read these documents. So in my view, you actually should go for, let's say, 3 steps. First one, you can use 27001 again as a baseline because it's the most logical to organize processes in your security. Then you upgrade your documents. Upgrade is not really a good word, but let's say you then upgrade your documents for CIR to basically make it compliant with this European level documents, European level requirements. And then as a last step, for each local country, you see if there are any gaps towards local laws and regulations. So this is the basically 3-step process that I would advise you to take. Okay, good. I hope that this answered the question. So yeah, let me then, I think there are no more questions coming in. Let me just check. Yeah, I think this is it. So let me then wrap up the webinar. So just a few words before I finish. As I mentioned, this webinar today was really too short to go into details of, I don't know, the implementation of all of these standards. But there are other webinars that I'm doing on this topic, and of course if you use these toolkits, they will also explain you basically everything that you need to know. And regarding the presentation deck, in about 10 minutes we will publish this presentation deck. If you are actually on LinkedIn or if you are on YouTube, you will see actually the link to download the presentation deck in the comments section. So just leave the this page where you're watching the webinar now, and just come back in 10 minutes and you will see this link for downloading this presentation deck. And we will also publish all the links, all the other links that we shared in the webinar today. So if you missed any of these links, you'll find them in comments. If you joined through Zoom, then we will send you all of these links via email, and you'll get them latest by tomorrow morning. And finally, you'll also see a link for a short survey, and it's really short, only 3 questions, and I would really appreciate if you could answer this survey, because it will give me feedback on how I was doing in this webinar today. And this would be all. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.